The bank teller rolls her eyes and speaks loud enough for everyone in line to hear. "Sir, you've been standing here for 10 minutes trying to figure out the deposit slip. Maybe you should ask your grandson to help you with banking next time." 81-year-old Captain Thomas Riley adjusts his reading glasses and continues filling out the form as younger customers behind him sigh and check their phones impatiently. What nobody sees is the small Navy SEAL trident pin hidden beneath his cardigan, representing 30 years of the most elite military service imaginable. What happens when armed robbers storm in will prove that age and experience beat youth and panic every time. Hit subscribe and share a story about an elderly veteran who surprised everyone with their capabilities. Thomas had been coming to First National Bank for over 15 years. Ever since he retired from the Navy, his pension was directly deposited, but he still preferred to handle certain transactions in person. At 81, he moved more slowly than he used to, but his mind remained sharp. Today was busier than usual. The line stretched almost to the door, and everyone seemed to be in a hurry. Thomas was trying to fill out a deposit slip for his grandson's birthday money, but his arthritis was making his handwriting shaky. The young teller, Jessica, was clearly frustrated. She kept glancing at the growing line behind Thomas and tapping her nails on the counter. "Sir," she said loudly, "you're holding up the entire line. Can't you just use the ATM like everyone else?" Other customers were getting annoyed too. A businessman in an expensive suit checked his watch dramatically. "Come on, old man," he muttered. "Some of us have real jobs to get to." A woman with 2 small children joined in. "This is ridiculous. He's been standing there forever. Why don't old people learn how to use technology?" Thomas kept his head down, trying to ignore the complaints. He had fought in 3 wars and commanded SEAL teams in some of the most dangerous operations in military history. But here in this bank, he was just another slow old man causing problems. "Maybe you should consider online banking," Jessica suggested with barely concealed impatience. "It's much faster than coming in here and confusing." Everyone. The businessman stepped forward. "Look, Grandpa, either figure it out or step aside. Some of us have important things to do." More customers were joining the complaints now. Someone called out, "This is why I hate coming to banks. Always some old person who doesn't know what they're doing." A young man with his phone out was recording, probably planning to post about the slow old customer on social media. The caption would probably be something about entitled boomers wasting everyone's time. Thomas finally managed to complete the deposit slip with his shaky handwriting. "I'm sorry for the delay," he said quietly to Jessica. "I know you're all very busy." Jessica snatched the slip from his hand without looking at him. "Next time, maybe ask someone to help you at home before you come in here." That's when the front door burst open with a loud crash. 3 men in dark clothing and ski masks stormed into the bank. The first one was carrying what looked like an AK-47 assault rifle. The second had a shotgun. The third was holding a large duffel bag. Everyone on the floor now. The first gunman screamed, "This is a robbery. Anyone who moves gets shot." The bank erupted into chaos. People screamed and dropped to the ground. Children were crying. The businessman who had been complaining about Thomas was now curled up in a ball, shaking with terror. Jessica's hands were trembling as she reached for the silent alarm button under her counter. "Don't even think about it, lady," the gunman with the shotgun yelled, pointing the weapon directly at her. "Hands where I can see them." The third robber threw the duffel bag at Jessica. "Fill it up with everything in the drawers, now. And don't forget the safe in the back." Thomas had dropped to the floor with everyone else, but his mind was working differently than the other terrified customers. While they were paralyzed with fear, he was automatically assessing the situation with the tactical awareness that had kept him alive through decades of combat. 3 attackers. 2 long guns, probably 1 handgun concealed. They had positioned themselves poorly, bunched too close together near the entrance. No rear security. Amateur operation. The lead gunman was getting more agitated. He kept waving his rifle around wildly, his finger dangerously close to the trigger. This guy was nervous, which made him extremely dangerous to innocent people. "Hurry up with the money," he screamed at Jessica. "We don't have all day." The woman with the 2 children was crying hysterically. Her kids were clinging to her, terrified. Other customers were praying. Some were calling loved ones on their phones before the robbers could stop them. That's when Thomas noticed something that made his blood run cold. The nervous gunman was pointing his rifle in the general direction of the mother and her children. His finger was on the trigger, and he was shaking with adrenaline. In Thomas's experience, nervous amateurs with automatic weapons were far more dangerous than professional criminals. These guys were going to hurt someone, probably accidentally. The second gunman started walking toward the back of the bank. "Get everyone's wallets and phones," he ordered. "You old man," he pointed at Thomas, "empty your pockets." Thomas slowly reached into his jacket as if going for his wallet, but instead, his fingers found something else. Something he had carried every day for 40 years, even in retirement. His old service pistol, properly licensed and concealed. As a retired Navy SEAL, Thomas had maintained his training and certification. He still went to the shooting range twice a week. His reflexes might be slower than they used to be, but his accuracy was still perfect. The gunman approached Thomas, shotgun pointed carelessly in his direction. "Come on, Grandpa, move faster. You got hearing problems or something?" Thomas looked up at the young man behind the ski mask. "Son," he said calmly, "you picked the wrong bank on the wrong day. What did you say, old man?" The gunman demanded, stepping closer. That was his mistake. In one fluid motion that belied his 81 years, Thomas drew his pistol and fired 3 precise shots. The first disarmed the man with the shotgun. The second and third shots took out the assault rifle from the lead gunman's hands without injuring either of them. The third robber, seeing his partner suddenly disarmed, dropped the money bag and reached for what was probably a handgun in his waistband. "Don't," Thomas said firmly, now standing and pointing his weapon at the third man. His voice carried an authority that made everyone in the bank freeze. "I was a Navy SEAL for 30 years. I can put a bullet exactly where I want it from this distance. Do you really want to test me?" The third robber's hands slowly went up in the air. Thomas kept his weapon trained on the 3 men while addressing the bank. "Everyone stay down and stay calm. Jessica, hit that silent alarm now and call 911. Tell them we have 3 suspects in custody and request immediate police response." The woman with the children was staring at Thomas in amazement. The businessman who had been complaining about him being slow was now looking at him with something approaching worship. Within minutes, the bank was surrounded by police. Officers swarmed in, prepared for a dangerous hostage situation, only to find 3 disarmed robbers sitting on the floor with their hands behind their heads. The lead police officer, Sergeant Martinez, took in the scene with confusion. "Who stopped the robbery?" he asked. Every finger in the bank pointed at Thomas, who was calmly putting his service weapon back in its holster. "Sir." Sergeant Martinez approached Thomas. "Can you tell me what happened here?" Thomas straightened to his full height, and suddenly everyone could see the military bearing that had been hidden beneath his elderly appearance. 3 armed suspects entered the bank and threatened civilians. "I assessed the situation and neutralized the threat using minimal necessary force." Sergeant Martinez looked at the 3 disarmed suspects, then back at Thomas. "Sir, what's your background?" "Captain Thomas Riley, United States Navy, retired. Navy SEAL Teams 2 and 6, 30 years of active duty service." The entire bank went silent. Even the police officers were staring now with newfound respect. Jessica, the teller who had been so impatient with him, was crying. "Captain Riley," she said, "I'm so sorry about how I treated you. You saved all of our lives." Thomas looked at her kindly. You were just doing your job, young lady. You were under pressure. I understand, the businessman who had complained about Thomas. Being slow stepped forward. Sir, I owe you an apology. And my life. If you hadn't been here... Thomas nodded, but didn't need the gratitude. He had spent his entire career protecting people. This was just another day at the office. Even 40 years after his last official mission, Sergeant Martinez was reviewing Thomas's identification and carry permit. Captain, your records show extensive combat experience. Multiple deployments. Classified operations, numerous commendations. That's correct. Thomas replied simply. The police were leading the 3 would-be robbers away. The one with the shotgun looked back at Thomas with amazement. You're really 81 years old? He asked. Thomas smiled slightly. Son, age is just a number. Training and experience are forever. As the excitement died down and statements were given, the bank manager approached Thomas. Captain Riley, I can't thank you enough. You saved not just our money, but probably several lives. Those men were clearly dangerous amateurs. Thomas was already putting on his cardigan, ready to leave. I'm just glad everyone is safe. But the story was far from over. Security camera footage of the incident went viral within hours. The video showed the transformation of a seemingly frail old man into a precise, professional operator who handled a dangerous situation with textbook efficiency. News crews arrived at the bank, wanting to interview the hero. Thomas declined most requests, but he did agree to speak briefly to the local news. Captain Riley, the reporter asked, what would you say to people who underestimate older Americans? Thomas looked directly into the camera. I'd say that every person has value, regardless of their age. Young people shouldn't dismiss the elderly as useless, and older people shouldn't assume they have nothing left to contribute. Experience and wisdom are valuable assets that should be respected, not mocked. The woman, with the 2 children, approached Thomas before he left. Captain, she said, my kids want to say something to you. The little girl, maybe 6 years old, looked up at Thomas with wide eyes. Thank you for saving us from the bad men, she said. Thomas knelt down to her level, his expression softening completely. You're very welcome, sweetheart. Remember, there are always good people around to protect you, even when they don't look like what you might expect. The video of Thomas's brief interview was shared millions of times on social media. But more importantly, it started conversations about respecting elders and recognizing that heroism comes in all ages. Geller later said in interviews that the incident completely changed her perspective on older customers. She realized that behind every elderly person who moved slowly or needed extra help was someone with a lifetime of experiences and knowledge. The bank presented Thomas with a commendation for bravery, but he donated the accompanying monetary reward to a veterans organization. He returned to his regular banking routine the next week, but now the staff treated him with the respect he had always deserved. Thomas's story became a reminder that heroes don't always look like what we expect. Sometimes they're 81 years old, moving slowly, and struggling with a deposit slip. But when the moment demands it, training, courage, and a lifetime of service can transform anyone into exactly what the situation requires. And sometimes, just sometimes, the person you're impatiently waiting behind in line is the same person who will risk everything to save your life.